Hi, this is Olivia. Today I'm going to show you a function I created to validate your column headers. Now this is how I typically start all of my subroutines. This subroutine, I just named it random sub. And before I execute any code, I make sure to verify my column headers. I start by creating an array with the desired column headers. In other words, the headers I expect to see in my spreadsheet. Here I've initiated an array called column header R. It contains 5 string items, and they're numbered 0 to 4. So remember with arrays, we always start counting at 0. So here, item 0 is name, item 1 is address, item 2 is city, item 3 is state, item 4 is zip code. Then before executing any code, I call my function verify headers, and I pass to it the full array. So if my function verify headers returns true, then all my column headers were found and the code is executed. If it returns false, then that means that one or more of my column headers is missing. And so no code is executed. The program skips past this if statement and just exits the sub. So this is my function verify headers. It receives the column header array and it returns a Boolean value. I have 2 variables. One is called count headers. This will contain an integer that will increment every time a desired header is found in my spreadsheet. Test for headers is, it also contains an integer, and the number assigned to it will coincide with the column position where the header is found. For example, if the column header is found in column A, it will be set to 1. If the column header is found in column B, the variable will be set to 2. If it's found in column C, the variable will be set to 3, and so on and so forth. Count headers, we go ahead and initialize here. We just set it to 0 just to get things started. Next, we have a loop. Here's where we will loop through the column header array to verify that each column header exists in the open spreadsheet. The loop is initialized I equals 0 to U-bound column header array. In this case, U-bound column header array is equal to 4 because we have 5 items in the array. So U-bound is the size of the array minus 1, or you can think of it as the index of the last item in the array. With arrays, we always start counting at 0, so with 5 items in the array, the last index is going to be 4. Test for header is initialized here. It's set to 0. And it will be set to 0 with each iteration of the loop. Next, we have the code on array resume next. I'm going to skip this code just for a moment. I'll explain it in a minute. Here, test for headers may be changed from 0 to something else. So remember, test for header was already set to 0. But here, we may change it to something else depending on whether or not the header was found in the spreadsheet. So here, we use the worksheet function match to try and find the location of the column header in the sheet. So with this first parameter, we look for the column header. So we look for the indicated column header. So indicated by I. So when I is equal to 0, depends on the iteration of the loop, but when I is equal to 0, we're looking for name. When I is equal to 1, we're looking for address. When I is 2, we're looking for city. When I is 3, we're looking for state. When I is 4, we're looking for zip code. The second parameter is where do we look for that particular header. And we tell it to look in range 1:1. So 1:1 is the first row of the spreadsheet. Not the first column, but the first row. And this last parameter, 0, we're saying we're looking for an exact match. So 0 says look for an exact match. Now, if the column header is found, test for header will be set to the column position of the header. So if the header was found in column A, test for header will be set to 1. If the column header was found in column B, test for header will be set to 2, and so on and so forth. But if the column header is not found, match, the worksheet function match is going to throw an error, which brings me back to this code here. On error, resume next. As long as you have this code in your script, it will prevent the program from throwing an error message and halting the program altogether. It basically says that if there is an error thrown in the next lines of code, skip past it and move on to the next thing. So remember, test for header was already set to 0. So if no header is found, test for header remains 0. Otherwise, it gets set to the column position of the header. Next, we have an if statement. If test for header is greater than 0, then count headers is equal to count headers plus 1. So we increment count headers 1 every time test for header is greater than 0. And remember, it's going to be greater than 0 when the header is found. And we'll repeat these steps over and over until we've been through the whole array. Now we check to see if all the headers were found. So remember, U-bound column header array is 4 because we have 5 items in our array. So if 4 equals count headers minus 1, so if all the headers were found, count headers would be 5. So 5 minus 1 is 4. So if 4 equals 4, then verify headers equals true. Else verify headers is false, and we put up this little message box letting the user know that this macro cannot be run on this spreadsheet. So verify headers, notice, is the name of the function. So it's going to return true if all the headers were found. So we're returning a Boolean value. It returns true if all the headers were found, and it returns false otherwise. So let's go ahead and test it. So here are my headers, and here is my spreadsheet. Name, address, city, state, zip code. So all my desired headers are actually in the open spreadsheet. So when I run my sub, verify headers should return true, and I should see this message box appear. And there it is. Now, if I'm missing a header, so for example, if I tell it I'm looking for zip codes, plural rather than zip code, then I should get my error message. Macro cannot run on this spreadsheet. Let's run it. And there it is, because we have zip code and we told it we want zip codes. Great, thank you.